Hello, good morning, good afternoon. Today is Sunday, March 20th. I think it's first day of spring in some places in the world. I guess all the places in the world, but today. Um, we'll start by setting our intentions, making aspirations with the four immeasurable prayer. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from the happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment, anger, and aversion. So we will practice. We're not going to do a big review today. We did one last week. If you're new to this class, you can go on the YouTube, which is, I always forget what the YouTube is. Meditation with Michael Imperioli, or Michael Imperioli Meditation, one of those two. And the first two classes of 2022 have really extensive review. So, one of the things I just briefly wanted to talk about is why we do this, right? And we spoke a little bit, and I know Victoria spoke about it, about the two truths, the relative truths and ultimate truth. And in Buddhism, and I kind of talk about the bigger picture, and then our more mundane day-to-day life and how those things relate and interact, and looking at those two things at once. I mean, obviously, we practice Buddhism and meditation as an aspect of Buddhist practice to eliminate delusion, the delusion that has obscured us from the view and living from that view. And we talk about those three important things of the view is impermanence, interdependence, and shunyata, which voidness of inherent existence, meaning nothing exists in itself on its own. This also relates to interdependence, obviously, but even on a physical level, this physical and mental level, this self that we adhere to and cherish and label ourselves as and operate from all the time is doesn't exist the way we kind of just naturally assume it does. Even on a molecular, atomic level, physical level, it's made up of ultimately particles or waves and energy. But so the bigger picture of conquering delusion is the teachings of Buddhism, and that's the process we're working on. But on a day-to-day level, the relative truth, we're working with our mind, so we can start to be aware of how our mind works. So we can have moments of awareness, not just on the cushion. We're not practicing meditation to become meditators. We're practicing meditation so we can work with our minds. So we can be better human beings, because without having a level of awareness, without having moments of awareness, we're victims of our emotions, which sway us and swing us and propel us and create karma all the time, and make us behave in ways that we don't necessarily want to and will regret and want to apologize for. But the practice of meditation starts to give us this little delay mechanism. It's like when they would broadcast radio live, often there was a 7-second delay. So what you were hearing as a listener was 7 seconds after it was actually spoken. And this was so they could, if somebody said something they didn't want broadcast, like a profanity or just something like that, they could stop it from being broadcast. So it's almost like meditation starts to work and cultivating awareness. So it gives us this little delay between the impulse and the action. And that delay, and it's similar to the gaps between thought. We talk about that sometimes in meditation, probably not enough. Between each thought, there is a gap between the thought that arises and subsides, and the next thought. And sitting in that gap is often where the meditation takes place. I'm trying to make that gap more, but basically to create awareness that allows us to have a little bit of separation between the emotion and the action. So we're not constantly being triggered and then lashing out. You can be triggered and then have an awareness, oh, there it is again. Now my ego's threatened. I'm not getting what I want right now. And it's this person's fault. I'm going to yell at this person. I'm going to make life miserable for that person. Instead, you say, oh, there it is. My ego's getting triggered. But it's okay. You know what I mean? I don't have to lash out at this person. I can just say, be more direct, be more calm, not interact, not react, have some intelligent or wisdom choice in the matter. Let wisdom dictate how you're going to respond rather than just emotion. And that's what we're doing on a very practical level. And that's where this can be really helpful in the now, in the present, on our way to enlightenment, as if we want to say that. And that's very important. It's very important to keep that in mind. We're not just practicing so we can sit on a cushion for an hour or whatever, and although that's great and we should do that. And but this is one of the aspects that we are trying to cultivate, and it's really, really, really important. With that in mind, let's meditate. Let's work on our minds. And like I said, we're not doing a review today. We did one last week. We've done a bunch. So if you're new, do your best, or watch an earlier class. Let's do 11 minutes starting right now. I may talk a little bit into it, but maybe not. We'll see. Remember, the goal is to become aware that you're thinking and then apply a technique. Back to the breath, focusing on the space between the nose and upper lip, focusing your attention there once you're aware that you're thinking, or use the visualization technique of the cloud arising in the mind, the thought, cloud arising in the sky, analogous to the thought arising in the mind, or vice versa, and the thought dissipating like the cloud back into the mind from where it came, like the cloud dissolves back into the sky without leaving a trace, really. Or mind just looking at mind. You're aware that you're thinking, and you use your mind to be aware of the fact that you're thinking, almost separating mind from the thought, and then resting in the mind that has seen the thought, the mind that has seen the mind, and resting in that. If you feel yourself getting drowsy, sometimes it helps to raise the angle of your gaze, of your eyes. And vice versa, if you're feeling particularly busy in your mind, it may help to lower the angle of your gaze. Sometimes that little adjustment makes a difference. Back to the breath. I notice I'm thinking. I imagine that thought dissolving like a cloud dissolving into the sky from where it came. and almost rest in that spaciousness of sky. Be confident that it's there, always, really. Let it, almost like let it embrace you as you embrace it, almost that clarity, that calm, that limitless, unstained openness. What does that feel like, you know? I mean, it's both calm and also like there's also just the potential of energy, you know, potential of anything happening as well. It's not calm and like a, you know, sedation or something like that. It's much more about almost like pure presence, you know. And confidence that it's there, and confidence that this practice and your commitment to this practice um, is very worthwhile and sane and good, you know, wholesome and decent. Good. Okay. So wholesome is an interesting word. I never really thought about it before. Maybe it relates to non-duality, you know, of the whole rather than parts of it. We will move the camera towards the great Victoria, the brains of the operation, and she will continue our discussion of the 37 practices of the Bodhisattva, which is the heart teaching of Garchen Rinpoche, written by Golchu Togme Zangpo. And then we'll do some questions. We'll just do some, you know, talk about stuff.
Hello, everyone. So we're almost at the end of the 37 Bodhisattva practices. And we come to, with the next three stanzas that we're going to do today, we're coming to one of the most important stanzas, culminating stanzas of the whole practices. So the first two we're going to read is number 33 and 34. Number 33 stanza reads, because the influence of gain and respect causes quarreling and the decline of the activities of listening, pondering, and meditation. To abandon attachment to the households of friends, relations, and benefactors is the Bodhisattva's practice. So basically, this stanza speaks to the fact that attachment corrupts discipline, and that dulls or even destroys the clarity of our view. We forget the nature of impermanence, of all compounded phenomena, namely that all things on a relative level arise as results of causes and conditions, only to fall apart again and to become something else. The basic law of physical universe, which we call relative truth, karma, cause and result, is why things are called empty or selfless, or what Michael said, void of inherent existence. besides the labels and the attachments that we impose on these temporary events, like our bodies are temporary events, clouds in the skies are temporary events, everything basically that surrounds us in the physical reality is a temporary event, including our thoughts. Those are also temporary event. The only thing that is not a temporary event is the awareness, what in meditation we refer to as this limitless sky. The basis from which things arise for the moment the thoughts arise, and they vanish again into that basis. And that basis is called many, many things. It's called emptiness, lack of inherent existence. But it's also never called just emptiness by itself. It's the union of emptiness and luminosity. Luminosity meaning the cognitive quality of awareness, because whether we're asleep or whatever happens to us, awareness is always there. And then on that basis of the awareness at large, thoughts arise like little waves, they come and go. So when we get distracted through attachment, as in stanza 33, we forget the true nature of how things and why things arise. And so we can exchange a very precious human existence in which we can cultivate the mind, because ultimately, when this body is exhausted and the elements break down, what comes with us is primordial awareness, is the base mind. Not the mind which identifies me as Victoria, as the this and that, and that I'm a mother, or I do this and this kinds of work, but the base mind, the awareness that never arises and never ceases, the awareness that is the base of all the other arisings. That's the thing that we connect to in meditation. That's what we're trying to penetrate through our meditation. We're trying to get to this level, to feel the source of where all the arisings come, where thoughts arise, and all the things that move us arise. And so really our lives are meant to be devoted to the pursuit of cultivating the mind. In Buddhism, really, we talk about two modalities. We talk about purification and accumulation. So what we purify is the obscurations to, we try to purify our ignorance, knowing how things really truly are, their ultimate nature and their ultimate condition. And the other one is the accumulation, is that we try to counter the negative and afflictive behaviors and try to accumulate and start to live virtuous lives, by which we kind of like clean up the mess, and we can get back to the mind that holds the view and can act from the source that has clarity and has freedom. Because when we act out of afflictions, when we act out of ignorance, afflictions and ignorance are the same things, because all the afflictions are based on ignorance. Ignorance is said to be one of the afflictive emotions. It's actually not an emotion at all. It's a cognitive obscuration. But it is the source. It is the basis of the other afflictions. So stanza number 33 speaks to not forgetting really what to cultivate and how to spend this life. I mean, it's one thing, needless to say, if we have to spend portion of our life acquiring food and resources that are necessary for our life, the life of our family. But when we spend our precious human existence on the acquisition of big houses, boats, and unnecessary things, there's a huge flaw, because needless to say, when this body disintegrates and it's ready to become other things, we cannot take those things with us, and we will have wasted our precious human existence. So to not forget through afflictive behaviors and attachment, not to forget why we're really here, what we really have to do here with this time that we have. Stanza number 34, because harsh words disturb others' minds and cause the bodhisattva's conduct to deteriorate, abandoning harsh speech, which is unpleasant to others, is the bodhisattva's practice. And this is kind of a pretty much self-explanatory stanza. what that stanza really refers to is that we must always examine the source of our intention, the source, the place from which we speak. Are these words coming from some kind of an afflicting behavior when we're trying to put someone down and hammer them? Or is that space clear, has clarity and has freedom where we're speaking with a good intention? So, never stay on the outer level, always examine outer, inner and secret level. Always know the source of your intention. So that's what's very important. And, and that also the stanza speaks to harsh words being something that obviously comes from an afflictive place, because harsh speech is not strong speech. When we have strong speech, like when we educate our children, for example, or sometimes we have to neutralize a certain difficult situation, we can have very strong words and very direct words, but we have to know the source, and the source should not be an afflictive one, and that's what that stanza speaks to. And here we get stanza 35, we get to really the heart of the Bodhisattva practices, kind of a very culminating point. When disturbing emotions are habituated, it is difficult to overcome them with antidotes. By arming oneself with antidotal weapon of mindfulness to destroy disturbing emotions such as desire, the moment they arise, is the Bodhisattva's practice. The stanza says, when disturbing emotions are habituated, what does that mean? It basically refers to the point of when we live through the mind of the ego, when we identify ourselves simply with our desires and afflictions, when we identify ourselves with me and mine and what I want and how I need to get it, we can no longer apply normal antidotes. For example, with anger, we apply the antidote of patience. With attachment, we apply the antidote of ugliness, or when things fall apart. But when afflictive emotions are deeply habituated, in other words, it means we identify in terms of these afflictive emotions. We say, I am an angry person, or I'm a desirous person. This is who I am. At that point, it's almost too late to apply antidotes. So the only thing that can really change the course and reverse that kind of a mental solidity from that very kind of a poisonous form and turn it toward a mindfulness and a more illuminated form is what is in Buddhism is referred to mindfulness awareness. And what that mindfulness awareness is exactly that very thing that we try to do in meditation. When we try to sense the base of where thoughts arise, and from our thoughts, obviously, our speech arises and our actions arise. We try to look at that source from where thoughts arise, activity arises, and into that source, we watch the thoughts disperse again. We connect to that source. That's what we refer to as the nature of mind. This is what we refer to as Buddhahood. This is the basis. And we have to have certainty, as Michael said before, trust that when you connect with this openness, this clarity, and in Buddhism, it's considered that the source is compassionate in nature, because why wouldn't it be? Let's face it, there's nothing to threaten it. The only thing that gets threatened in this universe is the ego. So when we connect to the source, we feel luminous, we feel compassionate. And the more experience we have connecting to the source, the more certainty that we acquire. When afflictions are habituated, we must always ask ourselves, we must always examine, do we identify only with the pain, only with the affliction? Or is the space of awareness greater And do we rather identify with the spaciousness and see the affliction as this momentary arising? In that corner of my life, in that moment of my life, I see this difficult situation, which is like a gray spot. I'm speaking to a difficult person right now, but my mind stays spacious and I feel myself, my awareness within that spaciousness. Or is all that I am is that small, tight spot? Am I only anger at that moment? So this is what we always have to ask ourselves. Do we identify only as a pain and the affliction, or do we identify with the spaciousness? And it's needless to say what we need to identify with. In meditation, we also examine the three doors: our body, speech, and mind. So the energy is always moved from, it starts with the mind, and then we have speech and the body. And so when we meditate, the training is, we start with the body, we rest the body very spaciously, and from that rest, when we connect to that rest, like resting like a mountain, sometimes it's referred to in Buddhism, your body should be very upright and very immovable. From that place, we understand what energy is. We can look at different kinds of speeds at which we're moved by different thoughts and afflictions. And from that place of rest, we can see and we can control much better when we tap into that rest of that spaciousness, that stillness. With our speech, we connect to silence, the big space of where the dimension of speaking, within which the dimension of speaking and the door of speech exists. And if we connect to silence, the words we produce and the words we hear are much more meaningful. And we can also really control them and be free in what we say, as opposed to just spew things out of that very kind of small constricted space where we just have to often fill space because we're uncomfortable and we just blah, blah, blah. And, we do small talk, which in Buddhism is considered very poisonous, because it's poisonous because it's deeply habituated, and then we can no longer connect to the spaciousness of silence. And then, of course, the most important is our door of mind. And the door of mind, we connect in meditation to the openness and spaciousness, and we call luminosity the cognizant nature of awareness, because that spaciousness, what we refer to emptiness or voidness of inherent existence, is cognizant, is awareness. Everything is awareness. And so through connecting to that, we can understand thoughts, and we can see them, and we can see how they arise and how they dissolve back into that basis of our primordial mind. Somebody asked me to clarify the word primordial really refers to a sense of time, but timelessness. Because we're speaking, the basis, this pure awareness, limitless awareness, is something that is beyond cognitive capacity. It does not rest within a conceptual realm of dualism where we have subject and object. So we cannot really identify it. We have to work with metaphors or negatives. That's why you have to take it. Once you understand how things work on a relative level, namely that things fall apart, they're inherently non-existent, then you have to take it into meditation so you can really feel, you can experience the basis in itself, because it isn't about having a label for that basis. It's about connecting to it and knowing it. And that's what we do in meditation. There's no other purpose for meditation. And when we connect to that basis, we can actually understand what we do, how we speak, and how we act. Connecting to that basis is what allows us any kind of freedom that's available to us. And freedom, of course, grows. The more spacious the mind, the greater is the freedom. The smaller the mind, we can't talk about freedom. We can only talk about burps, involuntary things. When we're dealing with difficult situations, we must ask ourselves, do we see the sky of our awareness, or is it just the clouds? Even when the sky of our awareness is covered by these clouds, do we remember that the sun is still there? Do we remember that our mind is still luminous and there is more? If we remember, then our awareness is present. And if we don't remember, we are swept away into the energy of ignorance and affliction. In other words, when we act emotionally, we are already hijacked. We are not acting. We are reacting. It's just a little involuntary jerk, almost like physical responses to hunger or eliminating the waste and things like that. We cannot call them actions. Again, if we identify with the pain, with the affliction, or do we identify with our awareness, which is greater than the dark spot? Or are we hijacked by the affliction? It's our duty to work on having mental presence, of having this space of awareness. And that's why we meditate. And that's why we work with our 3 doors, to maintain our ability to act as opposed to react in some kind of an involuntary physical gesture. In difficult situations, that's when we really know definitively if our practice is stable or it's a joke. Because meditation practice is not spacing out and fantasizing on a comfortable cushion. Bodhisattvas are called warriors. It's really wartime training, because we in meditation train for meeting difficult situations in life. That's what we're really trained for. We're not training for walking beautiful fields and collecting flowers. If it was only about that, we wouldn't have to train. We wouldn't have to meditate. We wouldn't have to hear, ponder, and meditate. And I was listening recently to a teaching that Karmapa gave, and he said that very much the same kind of a thing. He said that Bodhisattva trains like a warrior and not unlike a soldier in a military setting. A soldier analyzes and examines wartime scenarios, how to cultivate a proper response, so that when a real situation arises, the soldier will remember the training and not run away, but will call upon his training and will know what to do, will know how to save others, how to defend them, how to pull them out of fires and take the comrades, from when grenades were thrown on them, rescue them. So that's what we train for. We train in the same very way. We train against the waves of afflictive emotions. We train to pull ourselves out of those kinds of places, but we also train not to suck others into them. So when an afflictive emotion or circumstances arise which produce an afflictive emotion, this is what our training is for. We've trained in order to dissolve that. It doesn't mean that we just collapse and not act, or that we are not strong and we don't speak very clearly and forcefully. Not at all. It doesn't mean anything like that. What that means is that we're not swept away and we're not gone. It means that we have the mental presence, we're stable, and the practice works. And so what I wanted to examine with you is the mechanism of the affliction. What happens is in affliction is that spaciousness of awareness collapses. It becomes, the minute we become very possessed with an afflictive emotion, anger, for example, somebody brushed against me, or did something, took away my wallet or stole something from me, I become very, very offended, and my consciousness, space of my consciousness really, really collapses, because now it's me against him, and I have to get this, and I want these results because my ego is now scarred. So this is what happens. Consciousness really collapses. The space becomes very tight, very dark. And we're hijacked. And the minute we bring rationalization into it, we say, that guy, he did that to me. I have to go after him. I got to do this and this and this. That's the minute you weaponize your affliction. Your ego weaponizes the affliction. And we're very fooled because we have mental processes inside these egoistic, afflictive mental states. We think that we're okay because our mind is present. I'm rationalizing to myself why I have to go and cut off that guy's hand because he took away my wallet. But that's really just being swept away by affliction. If somebody did something wrong to you and you can hold your seat, meaning that your meditation is working and the space of awareness is large, you see this dark place, but you act with a very different ability. You don't react, you act. You can make a choice. They're very, very different. And as I said, to examine that, you can always look into the situation and you can see the afflictive emotion if it has completely swallowed you and hijacked you. You can see the space is very collapsed. You can't see the spaciousness. All you can feel is being on fire and how you want to hurt somebody else because in your mind they did something to you. However, if you turn that person into a 2-year-old, you said, well, that's a 2-year-old. You wouldn't necessarily run for your knife and vengeance against that person. So having awareness is that space that understands that when somebody acts in a particular way toward you, you have choices. You don't have to react like a bird. You can act. And of course, needless to say, only from clarity can you actually call something an action as opposed to reaction. So it's very important, and I urge all of you to always examine yourselves, your mind, and ask yourselves, am I only this pain? Am I only this affliction? Or is my awareness intact? Am I holding my seat? Because when we're swept away by afflictive emotions, by ignorance, the cause, there's nothing that nothing happens other than that we create some, we act in a samsaric way, we create karmic consequences, and that's how samsara is actually created. It's ego ignorance. And if we have presence, we usually have space, light, mind, clarity. And in most cases, as the clarity grows, we will have love, we will have compassion, or we won't act in the same way. So this is what I wanted to speak to about today. In stanza 35, I feel that that's what it speaks to, is holding the presence, training to maintain that presence, not confusing mental activity that serves the ego narrative, not confusing being swept away by the egoistic emotions when ignorance simply just collapses our mind, takes away its spaciousness, its air, its luminosity, and its ability to act. And, not to confuse that with having the presence of mind, having stability, and truly seeing how and what your practice is for. You have to understand, please, that practice is only, as Michael said in the very beginning of the session, we practice in order to be better beings. And also, please keep in mind that this, whatever I am in this life, my mind, in other words, not who I am in my job and, that I have 5 kids and I have 5 houses. What that means, who I am is the state of my mind. And that's the only thing that actually travels with us. There's no other suitcase, no other luggage that will come after this life is extinguished. Nothing else will come with us. And that's why it's very important to practice and to gain stability and mental presence.
Correct. Thank you very much. We will, there's a Q&A function on the Zoom. You can type in some questions and we'll see if we can talk about them. Okay. At dinner yesterday, a friend of mine stated he's not sure Russia is in the wrong for invading Ukraine. I felt anger arising instantly. And as the conversation went on, I decided to excuse myself. I paid my portion of the bill, told my friend I love them. Great seeing them. We see each other soon. I decided it was a them problem, in quotes, them. And it was up to me to allow that or not allow that to affect me. Here I am 10 hours later and still bothered by this. Yeah, you know, these things are very, things like this that happen in the world, you know, where there's so much suffering. I mean, incalculable and, you know, inconceivable suffering going on in parts of the world, and they push our buttons. And we get angry, you know. I mean, I get angry watching the news, and, you know, I'm angered that people don't help, you know, other countries don't help. And, you know, I don't have the answers, obviously, but I feel these things, and everyone does. I mean, the good news is here is what you had, you know, you had an awareness to excuse yourself because you said, I felt anger arising instantly. And as the conversation went on, so you had an awareness, and then you used your discerning awareness. You using wisdom to say, okay, is it worth kind of getting into some nitty-gritty argument to prove my point or him prove his point, which is probably not going to get anywhere because I doubt you're going to change, you know, someone's point of view? Or should I just, you know, extract myself from the situation because you were able to, and you did. So you know, is practice right there. You're using awareness. You know, if you just went with the emotion, you might have started an argument that could lead, who knows, to a fist fight with your friend because you're disagreeing so much. And you know, and here you are 10 hours later still bothered by this. And you know, we're going to be bothered by these things. I mean, this problem over there has not, you know, I don't think it's just the fact that your friend thinks Russia's right, because obviously a lot of people think Russia's right. I mean, fortunately, it seems like most of the world doesn't. That's, you know, that's what, you know, neither here nor there in a way. But, well, it's important on some levels, but that's not what we're talking about. But, you know, you're going to be angry until this problem resolves itself and moves on. You may be angry. You may feel these feelings because this is still going on. So, A, you know, you use your practice, and B, you know, you can see how you can be of use. You know, can you donate money? Can you raise awareness? Can you do a fundraiser? Can you know what I mean? It's like, what can we do? Rather than just think about it, feel angry about it, feel sad about it, watch the news or things like that, you know. That can really help because that whatever energy is being stirred up, this emotion also is energy, you know. There's an energy being stirred up by this horrible tragedy that's going on, by the, you know, the ignorance that you feel certain people have in relation to the situation. It's stirring a certain energy, and, you know, A, you have your practice, and B, you can use that energy and channel it into some kind of positive way to you know, be of service, to be in the solution rather than the problem, and just help in some ways, you know.
And I would like to say that you did use your practice. You had spaciousness not to enter into a combative kind of a behavior with someone who obviously is not really maybe capable of understanding what your anger is speaking to. Because anyone who thinks that genocide is okay may, in this lifetime, he may change, they may change, but maybe not. So it'll be up to you to really examine, because we all appear on one level like candy wrapped in the same kind of a wrapper, but some of us are okay with genocide, while others of us are horrified by that. So it may lead you to think, to examine, is your relationship really viable and possible going forward with the person of that mind?
Often it's a good technique and I think it's okay to share this, one of the things that I do when I have particularly strong feelings for someone, especially anger, and it could be someone I know, could be someone like Vladimir Putin or someone I don't know. And when I have a particular strong feeling, sometimes in my meditation, I'll imagine them above my head, right, while I'm sitting. And, waves of compassion coming from either, when I sit, often there's the image of the Buddha or Padmasambhava, or especially my teacher, Garchen Rinpoche, and images of light, coming from the Buddha, from the teacher to this person, that they may be, that they may too, like we say, at the end when we dedicate, by this memory, may all beings attain the omniscient state of enlightenment, making, aspirations. So that often can help,
And
just create some
Tonglen.
space. And Tonglen,
And
of course, yeah.
Tonglen. When people are so, sometimes a person's mind can be very diseased, it can be so in the dark. And so, needless to say, they, more than anyone else, require our love and compassion. Like in this instance, as Michael said, those who are causing the violence, not just those who are involved in the violence, almost require it more, because we want to almost take away the mental illness. We want to take away the darkness from them. So these emotions which stir all these kinds of difficulties would be pacified.
Do you have any recommendations for readings or books in alignment with the 37 practices? Well, there's the one by Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. What is that called? The Heart of Compassion?
Heart of Compassion by Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche.
Dilgokhyense. And you were reading something by Karmapa. Was that online, or what was
It's
that?
an online teaching by Karmapa called the 37 Bodhisattva Practices, which he did in New York City a couple of years ago. It's on YouTube, and it's brilliant.
Victoria mentioned the door of speech, which brought to mind a phrase I heard earlier this week, the lion's roar of silence, which I didn't understand. Do you know what is meant by the lion's roar of silence?
Lions, just as the victors are usually called, it's a name that refers to Buddhas and enlightened beings. So when they speak, obviously we talk about this level of spaciousness and the magnitude of what they say. So that's what it refers to.
Is Amitabha Buddha or chanting of Amitufu? I don't know what that is.
The pure land.
Amitufu? What is that?
Amitofu.
Does that play a role in our Buddhist life? It seems to be a central role in the Buddhist community by my house, where I picked up a lot of free literature and spoke with the teacher there. Just wondering what your thoughts are on this.
Amitabha Buddha, because in the traditional Buddhist canon, all energy of enlightenment is of the same quality, but Buddhas manifest to us because of different aspects. Some are wisdom aspects, some are protection aspects, some are compassion aspects. The Buddhas we see with the sword, for example, Manjushri, the sword cuts ignorance and ego. Others have flowers. Some have the Prajna Paramita. There are different aspects of compassion. Buddha Amitabha is a Buddha of long life, and in Chinese Buddhism, specifically the Mahayana branch of Pure Land, it's a very kind of a big practice with the emphasis to be reborn in the Pure Land of Buddha Amitabha. Buddha Amitabha made the promise that whoever prays to him will be reborn in the Buddha field of Sukha.
But certainly, if you connect to it, if you go there and you have good feelings about it, you connect to it. It's
of course. It's not about saving yourself only. Remember, in Buddhism, we never do practices for ourselves. If we start with selfishness, we end with selfishness. It's just our ordinary samsaric condition is what selfishness is. So whatever we connect to in Buddhism through whichever branch, through whichever Buddha you choose to pray to. And in Tibetan Buddhism, for example, we often will choose to pray on one meditational deity, on one Buddha for specific reasons. Michael prays to Tara, I pray to Buddha of Compassion Shenrezig. But ultimately, as Garchen Rinpoche says, the nature of all Buddhas is one, compassion, mind of compassion.
Yeah, so if you go there and you connect to it and you feel, drawn to it, then by all means, that's definitely
it's an entrance.
Worthwhile practice. I have begun examining the notion of multitasking, and I'm trying to eliminate this from my behavior. In my view, multitasking is the opposite of mindfulness. Science has shown that human beings are not capable of focusing on more than one thing at a time. What are your thoughts on multitasking? Well, you're asking the wrong person about multitasking. It's not about you. Yeah, you can only do one thing at a time. Absolutely, you can't do teach a meditation class and learn my lines for tomorrow's shooting, and rehearse a guitar scale or something. You can't do those things at the same time. You can only do one. But life is multitasking. We're not just our jobs. You may have a job, and then you may go work out at the gym after, and then go cook a meal for your family, and then go clean the apartment before you go. Life is not just one thing. I think you have to examine whether or not you're taking on too much, which I definitely do sometimes, and have to pull back and have space and create rest and periods of rest and things like that. Or you may feel like you need to add a few things in your life that you have, you're not doing enough. So that it's not multitasking that's the problem. It's your relationship to it. So you have to judge that on a case-by-case basis. But certainly life is a multitasking endeavor, without a doubt.
And I would say life is a continuous river of becoming. It's unavoidable. You're laying down, then you're getting up, then you're going to the bathroom, then you're doing something else, then you need to eat, then you need to sleep, whatever. What's important is not the exterior aspect of physical life. What's important is the presence of mind. When you do those things, do you do them compassionately? Is your mind spacious enough to include others? Are your behaviors when you're with others include thinking of their benefit? That's what's important. We really have to watch our mind. It's our mind that directs our behaviors and our speech, and that's what's really important.
I mean, that speaks to the end of your question here. What are your thoughts? Do you have any advice about resources to practice strength and mindfulness in our daily routine outside of meditation? And it's what she said, and also bringing meditation into your daily routine, bringing mindfulness into your daily routine.
That's why we practice. We don't practice to bliss out on the cushion. That would be a complete waste of human precious life. We practice, as I said, like doing military drills, so that when we encounter things in life, in the world, we can respond in the proper way and not be swept away by emotions and afflictions.
Erin says she's found, having her own corner in the house with a little shrine, and pictures of the teacher, has helped motivate her to practice regularly. But now she's going to be traveling with her husband, worried about how to continue my practice in privacy. I do the portable shrine, where, when I go to hotels or travel, and bring some little, bring some photographs and some little objects and set up a shrine in a corner. You can do that in your hotel room. Try to find the space. If you can't find the space in the hotel room because someone's always there, maybe go out, take a few minutes, go out, sit on a park bench. You can certainly do that. It doesn't have to be indoors. It doesn't have to be on the shrine if you can't get to it, at the shrine if you can't get to it.
Or you just set up something very, very simple. You can just put a towel on a little table, set up a little meditation space with a small pillow or a cushion, and have a simple cup of water as an offering that you fill up in the morning and you empty at night. You can wake up earlier before your husband gets there. Or this is a good time to actually be able to connect with your three doors, body, speech, and mind in whatever situation, whether you hear speaking, television, and other things. Test yourself out. See if you can connect to practice. You don't need any special circumstances, but the visual aid of seeing a shrine that reminds you of being mindful and reminds you of the need for practice is really beneficial, I would say. We do it everywhere we go.
Have you ever thought about practicing Reiki? I don't know you don't know anything about that.
I'm not sure that has to do with expansion of mindfulness. And really, our main practices are not physical or emotional practices. Everything falls under the rubric of mind practices. That's what Buddhism speaks to. It doesn't really speak to other things.
Last week I practiced meditating my eyes open. It works to focus on a candle flame.
Whatever helps you. And
is there, yeah, whatever helps. So yeah, we spoke about that. She's just
and
kind of
softly,
confirming that
softly
helped.
Keep your gaze very soft. Almost see the space in front of the object, and then shift from the object to the space. See the space as a living presence.
A good introductory book for meditation of Buddhism. Thubten Chodron writes a lot of really good Thubten Chodron and Lama Yeshe have really good introductory books, as does the Dalai Lama. The Art of Happiness is a good one. I have an attachment to my hatred. Ukrainian war and Russian lies is like a curse that enchants me. My attachment makes me think my anger is useful. Can it be so? Do you have an antidote? That's a really good question. I mean, it kind of relates to the first question we started talking about today, the earlier question. But, you know, when anger arises, if we become aware of it and use that awareness to work with the mind, know that anger is arising, know that reacting purely out of anger is a negative, you know, can easily create negative karma and causes and conditions, then that is useful in itself. You know, we're going to have emotions. I mean, you know, until we reach enlightenment, you know, which probably most likely won't be in this lifetime. You never know, right? But we're going to have emotions. So we need to learn to work with them, you know. And it's not about saying you got anger and you're bad, or you did something wrong, or you're not a good person because anger arose or desire arose. That's being a human being. What are we going to do with it? So the fact that it's arising, or even thought arising, if the thought makes you think, makes you become aware, if the thought or the emotion is a trigger for you to go to mindful awareness, then it is being useful, right? Often people talk about righteous anger, especially in a situation like this, you know, where you want to protest, you want to fight again, you know, and rise up, or you want to, you know, make a stand and things like that. I really think righteousness and anger are two different things. That can arise, a sense of righteousness and a sense of anger. They can arise at the same time, but the fact that they're rising at the same time don't make it one thing. And it's probably better to focus on the sense of righteousness maybe than the anger, and figure out, okay, I feel like this is wrong and this is right, and I think it's valuable to put my body, speech, and mind and my actions towards this, that it would be of benefit to others. You know, when in doubt, you know, think about how what's arising and the thoughts that it's inspiring, how that is going to be a benefit to others, and if it is. So that's one way.
Yeah, and that's actually exactly the key, because anger, like any other afflictive emotion, think of it in terms of pure energy. So you have the impetus and you can transform it alchemically into a positive thing. You can take that energy and instead of destroying something which would be that just reactionary force, you use that energy toward producing something positive. Choose the actions, choose the activity, choose the path, and benefit. Counteract all of this horror that's going on in the world right now, against this massacre, against the loss of humanity. We can do a lot of things, but we can't do them when we're paralyzed simply by afflictive mind. Because out of being angry, we get very stuck in ourselves, and we only go through the motions of these kinds of things inside ourselves. I mean, occasionally we, of course, burst out and do things, but we're much more potent when we can take that energy and transmute it into something that is of benefit. And that's when we really act, and that's when it really matters, and that's when we have power. It doesn't just sweep us away and produce some kind of small selfish result, and torment us internally. Of course, pain is pain, but distinguishing pain from anger is also a big thing. Like feeling compassion, feeling my heart just tears apart all the time. At the same time, I don't want to forget that there are duties that I have to perform if I wish to counteract and change the balance in the world of this action. There are many things we can do right now. There are many, many different kinds of calls throughout the world how to change the balance of these injustices. And so when we're not simply being triggered by our emotions, we can be clear-minded enough and potent enough to go out of our way and change the balance.
Okay, last one, and then we'll close. Coach Calipari, I don't know who that is, but he says he likes his players, so I imagine he's a coach of a sports team, likes his players to play out of love because anger is close to fear and it is draining. Love can keep you going forever. Well, that's very interesting. I've never heard that. When you think of boxing, or martial arts or things like that, it's really important, like a great boxer, like someone like Muhammad Ali, who was one of, maybe the greatest ever. He liked to do things to make his opponent really angry, while he would remain calm and not angry, because when you get angry in the boxing ring, you lose control. And boxing really ultimately is all about control. And he felt if he got his opponent angry, they wouldn't be as focused, they wouldn't be as tactical, and he can pick apart their weaknesses and exploit their weaknesses better when they were more vulnerable, angry than not. So, that kind of makes a lot of sense. To playing out of love, that's a whole other, interesting philosophy of sport. But something to think about. Certainly anger, they say when you're angry, when you're possessed by anger, 90% of the situation you're not seeing at that point. Like you're like Victoria was talking about, when emotion rises, it's like this closed space, collapse of space. They even scientifically, they said it's almost like, before the anger, you had this 180 view. When the anger arises, you have 30-degree view. Something to keep in mind. With that, let us dedicate the merit from today's practice for the benefit of all beings.
Please continue to pray and atonement for Ukraine. Thank you all. Thank you for that.
By this merit, may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death.
Thank you, Nick.
As always, we thank our producer, Nick Solidago, for his kindness and generosity, and without whom we could not do this class. Next week, we will not have class Sunday. We may have it Saturday or Monday, or we may not have it. So pay attention to my Instagram later in the week. We'll have something up by Friday, probably on Friday. But it'll either be Saturday or Monday, or we may have to skip a week. Stay tuned. Take care. Bye.
Be well.